Hello everyone and welcome to the very first episode of Friends Till the End horror podcast. I'm Gina, otherwise known as Shock Horror on socials, and I honestly can't believe that this podcast is finally happening. It's been a long time coming, so let's get straight into it. If you're listening, thank you so much for being here from the very beginning, whether you followed me through my horror content, found me through social media, or you've just stumbled across this podcast because you're obsessed with horror like I am. Welcome. Grab yourself a drink, get comfortable, and let's talk horror. So I thought there was no better way to kick off the podcast than by introducing myself properly and talking about one question. Why do we love horror so much? Let's be honest, not everyone gets it, especially outside of the horror community. Some people think we're weird because we enjoy spending our evenings watching mass killers chase teenagers through the woods, or zombies tearing people apart, or for a little bit of razzle-dazzle, haunted houses where absolutely nobody makes sensible decisions. But for us, horror feels like home. How did I fall in love with horror? I've been obsessed with horror for as long as I can remember. It started from the age of 4. I grew up fascinated by scary films, creepy stories, and anything that made my imagination run wild. And while everyone else was watching family films, I wanted slashers, I wanted monsters, I wanted ghosts, and anything that would keep me awake afterwards. I've always loved practical effects. There's just something about the creativity behind them that CGI just can't replace. The blood, the makeup, the creatures, they're honestly works of art that nothing could ever compare. And that love eventually became much more than just watching films. It became a part of who I am. And now, as we all know, I create horror content. I attend conventions, I review movies, experiment with special effects makeup, cosplay, not as much as I used to. And I'm even writing my first ever horror novel, which is exciting. So please stay tuned for more details on that one. Safe to say, though, that horror has completely taken over my life, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Every horror fan remembers that one movie, the one that made them realise they were hooked with a certain genre. And for me, there was a few, but one of the biggies has to be A Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger wasn't just scary. For me, he had a personality, he joked, he taunted his victims, and somehow made being absolutely terrifying so entertaining. And that mix of fear and charisma made him unforgettable, and he's still one of my all-time favourite horror icons. And then obviously there's Chucky. A killer doll shouldn't work, but somehow he became one of the funniest, most brutal, and most iconic villains ever created. And there's just something brilliant about a foul-mouthed doll causing complete chaos. My favourite types of horror, if you've spent any time at all following me online, you'll probably know I have a massive soft spot for slashers. Give me mass killers, final girls, creepy campgrounds, abandoned houses, practical gore, and unforgettable chase scenes. And honestly, I'm a happy girl, but I also love zombie movies. Again, dropping about my book is about a zombie apocalypse in today's modern age. Exciting. And there's something about the survival aspect that always pulls me in. What would you actually do if society actually collapsed? Who would you trust? Would you survive? I'd like to think I would, but personally, I think I'd probably just trip over absolutely nothing and then ended up becoming a human Happy Meal. But there we go. But I also do enjoy supernatural horror, psychological horror, creature features. Oh, I'm a sucker for creature features. And the occasional found footage film when it's done well. So basically, if it's creepy, chances are I'm watching it. One thing that people ask me a lot, especially outside of the horror community, especially people who aren't horror fans, why would you watch something that's meant to scare you? For me, personally, horror isn't just about fear. It's about storytelling, the atmosphere, the incredible practical effects, the amazing characters, incredible music, and it's also incredibly nostalgic. A lot of the movies I love come from the 80s and 90s, and they have a style that still feels so special today. And I know I slate it a lot, sometimes a bit too much, but there's just something amazing about the horror community. Whether you're at conventions or you're chatting online or collecting memorabilia or you're just recommending films to complete strangers, horror fans just get each other. Now, before we finish, I thought I'd recommend a few movies that I don't think get talked about enough. If you haven't seen them already, I definitely recommend you adding them to your watch list because they're phenomenal. And the first one is K-Shop. I think I've lost count the amount of times I spoke about this on socials before. It's a British-made classic movie set in Bournemouth, featured around a kebab shop. Honestly, it'd make you completely never want to eat a kebab again. Honestly, it's brutal, it's gory, it's just honestly a masterpiece. I say that a lot about a lot of films, but only when I mean it. The second one is Rent-A-Pal. Rent-A-Pal is one of those movies that, for me, it always has me like a weird sense of creepiness after I've watched it. I feel like I need a shower because I don't know why. It just makes me feel like, ooh, it's just that kind of creepiness. And it also has Will Wheaton in, which for me, he's a phenomenal actor. Love it. Check it out if you haven't already. The third one is Doghouse. I speak about Doghouse so much. It's such a classic. It's a zombie / gory / comedy. British made again. Oh, phenomenal. And also has a bunch of the best of British actors you could think of. Honestly, check it out if you haven't already. And if you've already seen them, let me know because I'd love to know what you think about them. So before we sign off, I want to let you know what you can expect from this podcast going forward. So we've got horror chats, movie reviews, ranking certain franchises, and we're deep diving into horror history, discussions about the practical effects, new horror releases, special guests from the horror community. The one or two paranormal stories, although I don't know too much about it, we'll be having some people on from the paranormal community, so that'll be fun. And obviously we'll also be covering a true crime case once a month. And I spoke about this before, it's really important to me, is mental health. We'll be covering a special episode each month where we'll have just open, honest conversations about mental health and hopefully remind people that they're never alone. I really want this podcast to feel like you're sitting in a room chatting horror with a group of friends, nothing overly serious, just genuine conversations with people who love horror as much as I do. So before I go, I want to leave you with a question. And that question is, what was the horror film that made you fall in love with the genre? I generally love to know. So please send me a message on social media, leave a comment wherever you're listening, or let me know your favourite horror film. I might even feature some answers in a future episode, which will be good, and also get some other members of the horror community recognised, which will be fun. So thank you so much for listening to my first episode of Friends Till the End horror podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a rating if your platform lets you. It really helps new listeners discover the show. I've been Gina, otherwise known as Shock Horror. Stay spooky and remember, whatever you do, don't fall asleep.